Good morning, dear learners. Today we are going to discuss Unit 2 of PEG 105, and the title of your paper is Introduction to Literary Theory and Criticism, and the title of the unit is The Rise of Theory. Theory, as you know, is the study of literary texts, but over the years something has very radically been changed in the corpus of literary theory. That, beside literary texts, literary theory also deals with the wide panoramic views of disciplines from social sciences and humanities in general. Disciplines like history, political science, anthropology, all are blended into the study of literary theory. So let us first understand the evolution of theory and its historical context, that what were the factors that gave rise to literary theory as a separate discipline. Theory has dissolved rigid disciplinary boundaries, promoting interdisciplinary and plural perspectives. So as you know, that theory actually in a way deplores, it avoids any kind of homogeneous involvement. Literary theory basically professes the need, the indispensability and the inevitability of an interdisciplinary studies. No subject, no discipline exists in isolation. There has to be interconnectedness, there has to be interdisciplinary studies of different subjects. It also rejects a single unified framework, embraces multiplicity and fluidity of interpretation. So literary theory actually rejects any kind of an overarching schema, overarching formula where things can club together. No, things are very disparate, things are very heterogeneous. And literary theory actually tries to combine it, try to amalgamate it as a unified whole. So as a separate school of study, it emerged in the 1960s and influenced by a dual historical dynamics: expansion of global capitalism through technology and economic networks, and registered movements such as civil rights and anti-imperial struggles and cultural dissent. So there are many factors, and among those many factors, two are very crucial. The first one is expansion of global capitalism. As you know, that after the Second World War, the rise of capitalism was at its height. It was so exponentially escalating. And with the rise of this global capitalism, people's lifestyle, people's belief system, people's ideologies was also evolved very dramatically. So, this was one of the very significant factors that gave rise to literary theory. Because as you know, that literature also never exists in isolation from the society. It is a very integral part of the society, and any changes that occur in the society, it gets reflected in literary texts. And the second one is resistance movements such as civil rights, anti-imperial struggles and cultural dissent. Anti-imperial struggles means towards the 20th century, towards the late 20th century, most of the countries got their independence. So they emerged as free states, free nation, an independent country. So what were the challenges, what were the mindset of the people, what were the living codes of the people? Literature also responded to that. So theory arose as both a critique of established paradigms and a response to fragmented, interconnected global reality. So the major two functions of literary theory was to critique established paradigm, the age-old, the antiquarian traditions, and the society actually validate it as to be unchangeable truth, unchangeable facts, something that cannot be changed, something that cannot be evolved, something that cannot be transcended. So literary theory actually challenged it. The authority, any kind of authority, the authority of the state, the authority of the God, the authority of any kind of authority, overarching authority, literary theory actually devoured it. So what are the major characteristics of literary theory? Let us discuss. It emphasizes language as a central model for understanding human experience. So it puts great emphasis on language in general. A language enables interpretation across multiple meanings and contexts. It shifts towards intransitivity, loss of fixed subject or aboutness. Expansion beyond literary text too. Because as you know, students, the horror of the two world wars actually, it shook the very core of human belief system. It has supramental force that affords, that nurtures, that cares the entire planet, and that is God. So, obviously, it was Darwin's Origin of Species, published in the 19th century, that germinated this belief system, this revolutionary belief system in the general public. But especially after the two world wars, it got completely changed. People started questioning any kind of authority. That is there a God all above who is caring this world, who is nurturing this world, who is protecting the world? And if at all there is a God, that where such wars happen, where such amount of devastation, massacre, genocide happens. So literary theory actually responds to it, that there is no such authority where we could put our belief. Shift towards intransitivity, loss of a fixed subject and aboutness, culture, politics, anthropology, psychoanalysis, and more. So, all of these disciplines, all of these knowledge systems come into the purview of literary theory. And literary theory also blurs boundaries between literature and other cultural forms. Because so far, what was the practice? That things were started to exist in isolation and in seclusion. That no, this is history, this is political science, this is anthropology, this is literature. No. But literary theory tries to, draw the similarities between the disciplines and the subjects. It encourages intertextuality and diverse perspectives. It enables critical analysis of contemporary conditions. And what were the key challenges? The key challenges are the risk of relativism and lack of clear criteria. Increasing abstraction and inaccessibility remains a dynamic, self-reflexive practice, and reflects and engages with globalization, cultural plurality, and complexities. So, what is the power of theory? Actually, one of the most important power of literary theory is to redefine knowledge system. What is knowledge? What do we understand by knowledge? Theory challenges fixed and universal knowledge systems, as we have already discussed. For instance, Michael Foucault, the eminent 20th century literary theorist, for him, knowledge is shaped by power relations and discourse, not neutral and truth. We say that, okay, knowledge is something neutral, knowledge is something unchangeable, knowledge is something invincible. But no, it is very much susceptible to cultural codes and cultural patterns. And moreover, power hierarchy. Who is in power? What kind of knowledge system he wants to postulate? So knowledge is basically volatile, and it is doomed to be changed by power relations and power hierarchy. And another theory, for instance, Jacques Derrida, the eminent deconstructionist, and for him, meaning is unstable. Texts are open to endless reinterpretation. Nothing is permanent and stable. A thing could be interpreted and reinterpreted again and again. And another theory is Jean-Francois Lyotard. He rejects actually any kind of grand narratives in favor of fragmented and localized stories. Because no grand narrative, because this entire world has been in the path of collapse, devastation, and fragmentation. So in this kind of an apocalyptic world, it is just unimaginable to think any kind of a grand narrative. So what exists is only truth in its fragmented forms. So Thomas Kuhn, for instance, for him, knowledge evolves through paradigm shifts, not linear progress. So theory here emphasizes two major things. One of them is multiplicity of perspectives. Our perspectives are heterogeneous, it is disparate. It is not focalized, it is not centralized, it is not concentrated. So multiplicity of perspectives and knowledge as constructed and contingent. So no knowledge form is ever stagnant, ever stable. It is always contingent, and it is constructed and reconstructed again and again. So theory and the transformation of interpretation and boundaries. Theory actually expands interpretation beyond literature to culture, politics, identity, and media. It involves everything. It involves literary text, it involves cultural studies, it involves identity, and it involves also media studies. For instance, Roland Barthes, in his significant Death of the Author, he says that meaning created by readers, not by fixed authors. So whenever we are talking about a meaning, for instance, whenever we are reading something, that the immediate thing that strikes us is that the meaning is feeded by the author into the literary text, and the author is the authority in a way. But Roland Barthes says that this is not the practice. And this is not the case. Because whenever we are talking about a text, it is because of the reader that a text gets alive, not because of the author. So, the moment the author is dead, then only a reader can be alive. For instance, Jonathan Kuehler says that theory provides tools across disciplines not confined to literature. It breaks down disciplinary hierarchies. Literature, philosophy, sociology, anthropology becomes interconnected. All things come together. And under his branch, under the branch of literary studies. So it blurs the boundaries between text and context. Both are intertwined and both are identified as one and whole. And the critical tensions are risk of relativism and abstraction, question of literary specificity and expanded theory. Ultimately, theory redefines interpretation as open-ended, reconfigures intellectual boundaries as fluid and dynamic. So what is the paradox of novelty in theory? Whenever we are talking about theory, what is the novelty in it? Theory promotes innovation, critical and intellectual disruption. It is something like of an iconoclastic movement that breaks, that ruptures any kind of an established system and established authority. Yet novelty often becomes repetitive and institutionalized. So, Theodor Adorno and Max Horkheimer, these two German philosophers and theorists, actually, for them, culture industry produces standardized novelty, illusion of difference. Frederick Jameson, for instance, say that postmodern culture marked by perpetual present and recycling of styles. So, Jean Baudrillard, for instance, say that novelty becomes simulation detached from reality. Simulated reality, the illusion of a reality. So these theorists actually, like Frederick Jameson and Baudrillard, Adorno and Max Horkheimer, they say that often this, in the name of innovation, in the name of novelty, what the postmodernist writers, postmodernist artists are doing, they are just involved in something very repetitive. Their style becomes too very repetitive, and thus it sounds very redundant. So yes, for today's class, this is it. And we will discuss it in the rest of the thing in the next class.